You know what you did. Maybe it was without thinking, with no intention other than to be who you are. But that gesture, that word, that presence changed everything. The person had stopped believing. They expected nothing. They were used to silence, to absence, to emptiness. And then there you were, with something so simple, so small it seemed insignificant, but it wasn't. That's when everything turned around. Because in that moment they felt seen, they felt important. For the first time in a long while, they felt that someone truly cared, not for what they could give, not for what they showed, but for who they were. And maybe you didn't even realize it. Maybe it was just an act of kindness. But for them, it was proof that love still exists. And that will never be small. Do you have any idea what you caused? You have no idea what you caused. The impact you left, the void you filled without even realizing it. They were there, carrying a weight that no one could see, a weight that couldn't be expressed in words, that time wouldn't dissolve, that no one noticed because they learned to hide it well. You know how it is, pretending everything is fine when it really isn't. You've been through that, haven't you? So have they. But that day, in that moment, something different happened. It wasn't a great turning point. It wasn't a miracle that changed everything in an instant. It was just a gesture. But it was exactly what they needed. Because when you looked into their eyes and truly saw them, something inside broke. A barrier they didn't even know they were still holding on to. You weren't in a hurry, you didn't look away, you didn't pretend you didn't see. And it may seem small, but do you know what that means to someone who has learned to be invisible? It was in that second, in that detail, that everything changed. She spent so much time hearing that she wasn't enough, that she wasn't strong enough, pretty enough, interesting enough, or worse, that she simply wasn't. Just that. Nothing. Invisible. And then, you arrived. Not with grand speeches, not with promises that dissolve at the first breeze. You arrived with something real, a look that said, "I see you," a word that sounded like, "I care," a touch that screamed, "I'm here." And she felt it. For the first time in such a long time she felt, you have no idea what you caused, but for her, it meant everything. Because sometimes, all someone needs is a single proof that it's still worth believing. A single proof that the world isn't always cold, that not everyone turns their back, that being alone isn't the only option. And you gave her that proof. Do you know what that means? It means that without realizing it, you became the exception in the life of someone who only knew disappointments. That without planning, you broke down a wall that seemed unbreakable. That without effort, you brought a little light to a place that had only shadows. And you know what's even scarier about it all? That maybe you never even noticed, because for you it was just any moment. But for her it was the moment, the one that will linger, the one she will remember on tough days, the one that maybe one day she will share with someone as the reason she decided to try one more time. And now there's no turning back. You've already made your mark. You've changed something. You've made a difference. So tell me, can you see what you did? Or do you still think it was just a small, insignificant gesture? And now you go on with your life, unaware of the effect you caused, not realizing that, while you think of other things, other worries, everything you need to do, someone is remembering you. Not as a name, not as just anyone, but as that moment that changed everything. Because that's how it works. Those who do good for real, without expecting anything in return, rarely realize the extent of their impact. You have moved on, but she hasn't. She still relives that moment, that look, that word, that touch, that gesture that may have seemed insignificant to you, but to her, it wasn't. You broke a cycle without knowing. You planted something that could grow at any moment, and maybe that scares you. Because suddenly, you understand that every detail matters, that even the smallest of your actions could be the turning point in someone's story, that you could be saving a life without realizing it, rescuing a heart without knowing, igniting hope where there was only darkness. Can you know what's even more impressive? That it wasn't a coincidence. This didn't happen by chance. It happened because in that moment, you were truly you. You were human. You felt. You didn't shy away. And now, unintentionally, you've changed someone's story. But the question is, what will you do with that now? Because if you were able to cause all of this without realizing, imagine what you could do when you're aware of it. And it's not about carrying a burden or taking responsibility for all the pain in the world. It's about understanding that you have an impact, that your presence can be a relief, that the simple fact of your existence, of being attentive, of caring, could be exactly what someone needs. You've done this once. What if I told you that you could do it again? What if I told you it could be today? Maybe by crossing paths with someone who needs exactly what you have. Maybe with a small gesture that you don't even realize has power. Maybe with a word that for you is just another one, but for the receiver means everything. So what will you do with that now? Or do you still think it was just coincidence? You might keep thinking it was just a fleeting moment, that it didn't mean that much, that it was just another day, another conversation, just another detail in the routine. But it wasn't. Because while you go about your life, someone still feels the impact of what you did. They still relive that feeling. They still wonder if it was real. What if you knew what it caused? What if you could see what changed inside her? What if you could feel, for just a second, the relief she experienced? Because until that moment she was trapped inside her own head. Inside the doubts, the fears, the memories that don't heal. You had no idea. You didn't see the sleepless nights, the heavy silences, the tears that went unnoticed. You didn't know, and yet you arrived. And you arrived in the right way. Not asking for explanations, not wanting to fix anything, not trying to mend her. You simply were there, and that was everything. Because she didn't need answers. She needed presence. A single moment that said, "You're still here, you still matter, someone still cares." And now everything has changed. You didn't just leave a mark, you became a reference point. She may not talk about it, she may never say it out loud, but somewhere inside her, every time she feels alone, every time she thinks that no one sees, that no one feels, that no one cares, she will remember you. And maybe that won't change the world, but it changed hers. And maybe it didn't make a difference for everyone, but it made one for her. And in the end, isn't that what really matters? Because if everything you did without realizing had this impact, just imagine what could happen when you choose to be present, when you decide to look, to listen, to feel. Because yes, you have that power. And now that you know this, will you ignore it? Pretend you didn't see, pretend you didn't feel. Or will you realize that amidst all the rush, the chaos and the noise, you were exactly what someone needed? And now, knowing this, what are you going to do about it? You could try to forget. You can go on with your life, follow your days, get lost in obligations, distractions, the automatic flow of everything. But deep down, you feel, because now knowing the impact you made, something inside you has changed. Maybe for a moment you tried to downplay it. It was just a moment. But what if it wasn't? What if that moment was the thin line between giving up and trying again? What if what was just an unintentional gesture for you meant a breath of fresh air for her after a long time of feeling suffocated? You weren't there to see what happened next. You didn't see the moment she found herself alone again and felt that knot in her throat unraveling. You didn't see when she closed her eyes and for the first time in a long while felt relief. You didn't hear the thought that came right after. Maybe I still have a chance, because that's what it's all about. You gave a chance, not for yourself. For her to believe, to breathe, to realize that the world isn't just made up of absences, disappointments and closed doors. What if I told you that this happens all the time? That in this very moment, while you're listening to me, there's someone who needs a moment like this. Someone who just needs a spark of hope, a sign, a hand that, even without intending to, says, "I am here." And the most amazing part, you can be that person again, without needing to change who you are, without needing rehearsed words or planned gestures, just needing to be human enough to see beyond yourself. And I know you feel this, that you've lived moments where you needed exactly that gesture and it didn't come, where you looked around and didn't find anyone who noticed. I know you understand this pain. I know you've longed for a sign, a breath, someone, and now you have the chance to be that for someone else. But you'll need to step out of automatic mode. You'll need to be present. You'll need to look into people's eyes genuinely, because you never know who is holding their own world by a thread. And maybe without realizing it, You are the only thing keeping that thread from breaking. Do you feel the weight of that? Because this is the part no one talks about. That sometimes the lives we save aren't those that ask for help. They are the ones that pretend they don't need it. They walk around carrying everything alone, never letting on how much it hurts. But if you look closely, if you pay attention, you'll see the signs, and when you see Brusa, what will you do? Because ignoring it is always easier. Pretending you didn't see it, going on your way. But what if the roles were reversed? What if it were you there, needing just a single sign to keep going? You would hope someone was paying attention, right? So tell me, why can't you be that person right now? Now that you know there's no turning back, you can't pretend you didn't see, didn't understand, didn't feel the weight of what that means. You don't have to change the entire world. You don't have to carry all the pain you see or drown in the responsibility of saving everyone who crosses your path. But one thing is certain, you have an impact. Each look, each word, each presence of yours creates an effect even if you don't realize it. And that's the great truth that few want to acknowledge, because it's easier to believe that none of this makes a difference, that we're alone, that no one notices, that no one cares. Have you thought that way before? Have you had moments when you doubted if anyone truly saw you, if anyone really cared? Now imagine if in that moment someone had looked at you for real, if someone had made that small gesture, the one that requires no effort, but would have changed everything. You know how much that would have meant. So tell me, why can't it be you now? Maybe that's why you made it here. Maybe this is your sign. Maybe this is the time for you to understand that you don't need anything grand to make a difference. You just need to be present. And it's not about solving someone's life. It's not about carrying burdens that aren't yours. It's about realizing that while you're caught up in your own problems, there are people around you holding things far heavier than they can bear. And sometimes all they need is a reminder that they're not alone. What if you could be that reminder for someone today, perhaps for the person who just walked by you and you didn't even notice? Maybe for that friend who doesn't talk much but always seems a bit distant, or perhaps for someone in your family who carries a silence that nobody questions. You may never know exactly who needs it. But if you're attentive, you will feel it. And when you feel it, what will you do? Because what you do now matters a lot. Now that you know the impact you have had, the impact you can have, you can't just ignore it. And I want you to reflect on this. Think of a moment in your life when someone did something small for you, but it had an immense meaning. Think of that instant when a gesture, a word, a glance gave you the strength to keep going. Have you experienced that? If you have, share it in the comments below. I want to hear your story. I want to know what made you persist, what touched you, what changed your day without the other person even knowing. And if you've never lived something like that, tell me, how would it have been if someone had done that for you? If this message resonates with you, if it touched something inside you, give it a like. It helps more people receive this message, more people who might need exactly this today. And if you believe the world needs more people who see, who feel, who care, subscribe to the channel, because maybe this is the first step for you to start seeing what has always been there. Now, before you go on with your life, I want you to take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a moment. Think of someone who has made you feel seen, even if just for a brief moment. Picture that person's face, recall the feeling that moment brought you. Now, think of someone who might need that right now. Maybe a name comes to your mind, maybe not. But if it did, what's stopping you from doing something for that person today? Send a message. Ask how they are doing. Say something they might need to hear, because you never know the impact it could have. And what if your simple action today is exactly what someone needs to keep going? You've been on the other side. You know what it's like to want to be noticed and not be. So this time, be the difference. And if this resonates with you, share this message. Let this video reach more people, because you never know who might need to hear this right now. The world is already filled with haste, coldness, and distance, but you can be different. And if you choose to be, maybe without even realizing it, you'll change someone's life, or perhaps save one.